Economic impact analysis is to examine the effect of policies, projects, and activities on tourism sectors in Singapore. For example, infrastructure and superstructure. It's used to compare the increase or decrease of the yearly growth percentage.
Singapore is a Southeast Asian island made up of 63 islands. The country name officially known as Republic of Singapore. As you can see in the video, this is an early age of Singapore during 1950s. The building and transportation are very less during the early years of the independence of Singapore. Most of the people in Singapore go to school or work by walking or cycling. Other than that, people stay in shop house during this day because it is cheap and very convenient to travel to work. Oriental Theatre is one of the largest and grand cinemas during these old days. It is also known as Cathay. Singapore is one of the most efficient and modern countries in the world today. There are many tall and modern buildings to attract the tourists all over the world. The shop houses become the historical monuments. From their hard work, Singapore has become the world's fourth leading financial center, and its port is one of the 5 busiest ports in the world. The tourism industry has generated 10.6% over 100 of Singapore's GDP in 2011. In terms of purchasing power parity, Singapore has the third highest per capita income in the world, so that Singapore is one of the fastest growing economic countries.
There are two methods to measure the tourism impact analysis in Singapore. The input or output modeling is the most simple way for industry in order to forecast various effects that occur the particular industry. The second method will be computable general equivalent modeling, also known as CGE. CGE is a class of economic models that use the actual economy data to estimate how the economy might react to change in the country for the future development.
There are 3 types of impact analysis. First is fiscal policies.
Fiscal policies is by which the government adjusts its levels of spending in order to monitor the nation's economy, whereas the main focus of Singapore's government expenditures is on the delivery of essential public goods and services to Singaporeans. Although the main source of Singapore tax policies is for funding of government, however, the government also seeks to enhance its economic competitiveness and attract foreign investment to Singapore. This combination of fair tax policies and expenditures programs are the key reason for Singapore's successful fiscal policies over the years, which complemented the monetary policies in promoting sustained and non-inflationary economic growth. The formulation of monetary policy in Singapore is based on the economic analysis and recent developments. Since the early 1980s, Singapore monetary policy is based on the management of exchange rate and at the same time maintaining stabilities of economic growth. There are three main features. There are three main features of exchange rate in Singapore. Number one, the Singapore dollar is managed against a number of currency of its major trading partners. 2. Monetary authorities of Singapore operates and manage float system for the Singapore dollars, allowing to fluctuate within a policy band. 3. The exchange rate policies band is periodically reviewed to ensure that it remains consistent with the fundamentals of the economy.
Lastly is social policies.
Singapore has developed the new social policy in places, for example, Little India, Chinatown, Kampong Glam, and Bugis Street. This has attracted the interest of the tourists to pay a visit to this culture village. Due to the high visiting and redevelopment project, Singaporeans concerned about the culture has lost their original characters and authentic elements. So the Singaporeans had noticed these issues, and the Singapore government is ensuring the historical and cultural resources of the places are carefully reconfigured to meet the demands of locals and tourists. The first effect is direct effect. The initial injection of tourist spending provides direct revenues for airlines, travel agents, hotels, shops, restaurants, and other tourist facilities.
For indirect effect, the company in Singapore used their revenue to purchase the raw material so that they could produce more products to customers in order to gain revenue as well as maximize the profit. As an example, the restaurant used some of the revenue to purchase good ingredients in order to serve better food and gain more revenue and maximize their profit.
Last will be induced effect. These activities spur successive rounds of purchases, with each round having moving back effects because of leakage due to savings and purchases of imported products and services.
I'm going to talk about calculations of multiple effects. First, there is a type 1 multiple effects, which is total of direct plus indirect effects over direct effects. Whereas there are another two is type 2 multiple effects. This is the total of direct plus indirect plus induced over by direct effects. Size of multiple effect. There are three multiple effects which are output, income, and employment. The output effects is Singapore dollar 25.6 billion, which is 4.9% of tourism output over the GDP of Singapore. It increased 5.8% from past year. Next will be income effect of Singapore dollar 22.2 billion, which is 5.2% of tourism income over the GDP of Singapore. It increases 18% from past 5 years. Lastly, employment effects, 1.97 million jobs, which is 1.9% of tourism employments over the GDP of Singapore. It increased 5.7% from past year. The gross domestic products, which also known as GDP in Singapore, is Singapore dollar 25.6 billion, which equal to 8.2%.
The table 1 shows that the total export and total import as well as the changes in the net export. The net export is equals to total export minus the total import. From 2009, it is negative 2.08 and 2010 is negative 1.10. We can know that Singapore is depending imported product In other words, the country is importing more than exporting. The table 1 shows that international tourism recipients is equal to percentage of total export and percentage of total import in Singapore of 2009 and 2010 are according to the World Bank report published in 2012. The size of multiplier effect shows that Singapore is a fast-growing country, so it leads Singapore to a better national supply. Therefore, the total production will increase, and from the effect above, the employment rates will increase as well. This leads to the GDP increase. And lastly, will be the full employment in Singapore. According to the chart, the employment rate in Singapore are estimated to continuously increase in the year 2022. In Singapore, impact analysis sometimes might affect by some limitation. By conducting the input-output analysis, the result has to be analyzed. Error may exist during the analyzing progress due to lack of experience by someone to interpret. Next, the result analyzed may be affected by the political issue. Therefore, it will be varied and not accurate for future estimation in tourism impact analysis. But there are minimal political issues in Singapore. Sometimes, there will be lack of consideration of environmental factors. This is because the result will be valid according to all the factors in Singapore. Although the economy in Singapore is growing fast, but there are some leakage occur. The first leakage in Singapore is the government has paying the foreign tourism agency to bring in a tourist, for instance, travel agency. Moreover, another leakage would be the foreign investor gain profit from Singapore. The airline is the example as it is the Malaysia coach company that gain revenue in Singapore. As Singapore is a small country, so that they need a lot of imported products which causes leakage to the manufacturing country, such as electronic components, motor vehicles, which directly affect the economy in Singapore. Multiplier process arises because of the induced increases in consumer spending which occur due to the increased income and because of the feedback into increasing business revenue, jobs and income again. In this graph shows that visitors' arrival increase every year in Singapore. Since the amount of visitors' arrivals increased in 2012, the multiplier process are affected. Increase of tourists that travel to Singapore, it will increase their spending power more in tourist sectors, such as shopping, accommodation, and food and beverage. So, when the tourists spend in Singapore, it increases the business revenue and profit. When the business increases, which means the income and employment opportunity will increase. This helps the Singaporean to reduce the unemployment issue. More business setting up will increase the customer spending on goods and services. Therefore, Singaporeans will tend to spend their money when they have more income. The economy in Singapore grows rapidly. There are a lot of investors investing in the entertainment and let the tourist destination in Singapore become more popular. If Singapore could maintain and improve for future development, the tourism industry will be able to contribute more in the revenue of the country. Whether impacts are perceived as positive or negative, it depends on the value of position and the judgment of the observer of the impacts.